there's this article I read recently about three circles. Like everyone has three circles: their inner family, their inner unit, and then there's like this village thing, and then there's their outer circle of like friends and like that you people that you want to see, or your chosen people that are a little bit outside your inner family unit. But the village, the middle circle, has really dissipated. Like people don't really talk to their mailmen anymore, and there's like teachers go unappreciated, or how many parents don't really know the teachers that are spending all their time with their children, or like how. And it's that middle thing of like losing the village that for me, I get a huge sense of communion, and see a rebirth of that through the music scene as well. And I mean, it's incredibly I think important to all of us just to have to it's church. It's not that people need religion, but like they do need that communion. They do need that togetherness, that shared experience that goes beyond a transaction. And we're not doing that as well as a society as we used to.
Hey, my name is Josh. I've loved indie rock for most of my life, and I play guitar in an indie rock band. But I'm also a psychologist, and I think a lot about the intersection of music and the human psyche and social experience. And I'm especially curious about the ways that music can help us find a sense of community and belonging with others, even for those punks and misfits who might rarely find it elsewhere. In this podcast, I'm joined by my lovely wife and bandmate Julia.
Hi!
We have conversations with other musicians and artists about the music we love, the music we make, and the importance of music as a means of connecting with others. This is indeed an indie rock podcast about the music that binds us. Hey everyone, I'm Josh.
And I'm Julia.
So today we're going to be talking to our friends in Grimm Winter. So Grimm Winter is a fellow DC band. So they play some symphonic alternative rock. We had the pleasure of sharing the stage with them, I think about 4 or 5 times. We're playing with them again in a few weeks, and we're tremendously excited about that. Before we get talking to them, I'm going to play a clip for you from their most recent album, and the song is called Nightingales. So here is Nightingales.
Colors overlap, but never blend together. They unravel at the fact that nothing lasts forever. Oh, just let the storms pass and bring out all the rain will flow through empty streets, wash it all away. And the long cold heart from beyond the veil will never reach us. Floats and nightingales,
Hey everyone. Could you start with just kind of introducing yourselves?
Sure. Hi, my name is Casey. I am the guitarist and chief neurotic officer for Grimm Winter.
My name is Clay, and lead singer and keyboardist of Grimm Winter.
Hey, it's Claire. I play the bass.
Hey, it's Andrew. I'm lead guitar and chief tech whiz of Grimm Winter.
So I'm going to start with a question for Casey. So at some of those shows that we've played together, you talked a little bit about some of the thematic elements of the band, and specifically about kind of the influence of like folklore and mythology. Tell us a little bit about that, like where that came from, what that means, how that manifests.
Absolutely. Yeah. As we're so fond of saying on and off stage, we are Grimm Winter, Grimm with 2 M's, like the brothers. And so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear. I think our influence from our name comes from the brothers Grimm, who were these, German storytellers who collected a lot of the spoken fables that existed at the time and kind of collated them to the book. That became kind of the fairy tales that a lot of people know these days, right? Like Little Red Riding Hood and, things like that.
Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, exactly. All the good ones. So in terms of how that relates to our music, I mean, it's part of it is the first few songs I had written that will never be brought to light, that no one will ever hear. Were these kind of fantastical, like literal, like there were stories about there was one about like a Persephone, who is a Greek myth, but
Sure.
and things like that, and so it was just a lot of fun to kind of take that project and bring to life, and I really liked the name. So when I ended up meeting up with Clay and Andrew and everyone else, I campaigned hard for it. Um,
Was the rest of the band, were you guys like receptive, or did you have to take some? Did it take any convincing at all to embrace that?
I don't remember there ever being another name besides Grim Winter, actually, to Casey's credit. And I really like the idea about fairy tales and like storytelling as being central to the name. And yeah, but I don't. Andrew, do you recall another?
There never was. So my recollection was how the band as we know it came to be started with Casey, Clay, and I. So we all met at Seven Drum City, local music school and rehearsal space, and it was the three of us and then our original drummer at the time, and then we tried out playing the covers of some
Mhm.
tunes. I think we tried Everlong by the Foo Fighters or whatnot, and then Casey was like, "Can I play one of my original songs?" And then he played November Midnight. For me personally, I was like, "Wow, that's a great song. I would love to see where this goes." And then Casey through the idea of Grim Winter. This is the project that I had, and yeah, I don't think anything else. Any other options were thrown out because for me personally, I was like, okay, this is a great concept. Let's run with it and see where it
Is the
goes.
lore true, Casey, that you had already saved the website before you met anyone?
oh yeah, yes,
Uh,
I had the
great.
website, I had the socials.
Just
He
checking.
was
I
so
had
so like I remember meeting him at this like the saddest little like post COVID backyard barbecue. It was just like people were
shout
just
out Nicole.
yeah. It's my friend Josh. Like just a few blocks away, and went out and like it was like grown ass people like playing beer pong for the first time in like 8 years or something, and just kind of be like, yeah, this is how we're slowly creeping back into like socializing. But I remember being super impressed by Casey. Like he had all these things. He was like, yeah, I have like 6 7 songs written and like pretty much well basically an album's worth of material, and like there's all these other things about, and he had like a backstory to them, and like all of these things developed. And then I was like, cool, man, yeah. So, like where have you performed before? He was like, oh, I've never been on stage, like I've and yeah, and so I was like, oh, cool, well that's like I've been doing that for my whole life, so like let's and been kind of slow on getting the band stuff going for myself. So I was like, this guy is perfect. So
Yeah,
uh,
Clay kind of Mr. Miyagi'd me. I really remember this was very early on into our friendship, and we were just hanging out in his backyard. It was just it's like a summer day. We were just hanging out. We were listening to music, and I think I had brought it up again. I was like, "Yeah, this is cool. Like, it's crazy that you've performed and I've never performed." And Clay gives me a look. He's like, "All right, you know what? You know what? Come with me. Come with me right now." And we got into his car and we drove down to right outside this
I
bookstore.
blindfolded
Um,
him. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it
And you
was
and
very
you got out and we set up a microphone on the street and he's like, "All right, let's do it." And so we were busking for a few hours
right
and
to the
we
deep
made
end.
some beer money and it was a great day.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. Wow. I'm impressed both with Clay with your kind of like your push and how I mean that's a pretty forceful but also like just a really cool
Street
strategy to
performing is the best way to get started, I've learned, because you have all these fears of people reacting negatively, but like 99% of people don't care. They're just gonna walk by you. No, you know what I mean? Like,
I assume you didn't know you were gonna do busking or
well, I know Clay had done it before. Like Clay had done it
I can't
in
remember
the
if I
past.
told you where we were going or not. I actually don't remember that detail.
Yeah,
For the story's purpose, we'll say you didn't.
yeah, yeah. We'll make it more dramatic because we're storytellers. Uh,
wow, that's amazing. I have never done busking.
yeah.
I mean, we've done shows where people don't care and walk, but never like yeah, in that kind of
Yeah.
setting. It's always been interesting.
Yeah.
But wow, what a first experience
Mhm.
to play music in front of people
Yeah,
with some crazy person blindfolding you and taking you on the experience. That's a very interesting foundation to build a musical partnership from too. Like how did it go after the busking experience? Like what was that like? Did you guys start then talking about like doing a band, or like what was
yeah.
the fallout after that?
I was like, I know some people at the School of Rock where I was working at the time, and that's when I wanted to get Andrew and involved, and then eventually our first drummer and bassist.
My favorite introduction. Here's how I met Casey and Carter. So Clay and I went to a mutual friend's party, and then I just randomly were talking. He was like, "Hey, I have this." He said session. I thought he said recording session, and so that was what imprinted in my brain. He was like, "I have this recording session tomorrow with this guy Casey. You want to come and try out for?" I think it was bass at the time was what I was going for. So like, yeah, sure, let's try it out. So, it was at Seven Drum City. So it was before the aforementioned rehearsal session or jam session that I mentioned before. So I pull up and park at Seven Drum City, and I go in behind two guys, one with a guitar in his back, and then another guy next to him. So they check in at the front desk, go off to the side, and then I'm right behind them, saying at the front desk, "Hi, I'm here for a recording session with a guy named Casey." And actually, so as a sidetrack, I'd never been to Seven Drum City before that. So, guy with the guitar says, "Oh, hi, I'm Casey, and this is my third cousin Carter." Um, so yeah, that was like, it was a cool introductions, and the three of us went down to the room. Clay, I think, was running late, so we were just the three of us in the room, meeting each other for the first time, talking, getting to know each other a little bit. And I was like, okay, where do we go here? Let's jump in on this or what? So it was an interesting, it was a really cool first meeting, and the rest is history.
What was the time span between? Because you mentioned then Casey, you had this set of originals, right? That you kind of started sharing the band. Was that in the same session, or was that like a follow up, like practice or rehearsal that you guys were doing?
Yeah. I mean, so it was cool because I think we all came in with our own songs. Like I had a bunch, but Clay and Andrew had both been writing music for a while, and so when we initially like when that conversation from covers to original happens, everyone kind of put their songs in the pot, so to speak, and we all
Right.
listened to all each other's stuff. And yeah, it's weird. I don't think there was any hesitation or like we were all just like, yeah, we got original songs. Let's make some. Let's be a band that plays original music. And we kind of dove right in. So
Given that you have like multiple songwriters, right, and you kind of like put it in the pot, like you said, um, did you guys have conversations when you were kicking off about like the sound of the band, or the sort of differences across? Because like you guys have a pretty like eclectic array of sounds, right? Like for
Absolutely.
instance, like I was listening to your album just yesterday, and like I mean it runs this gamut, and like the songs are all awesome, right? But there is such a like different vibe to some of them. What kind of conversations did you guys have when you were starting to put together these songs? Like what was that like?
I think that it was kind of an organic process of like figuring out what we liked playing together. It's because we were all coming in from very, very different like backgrounds, and like, and this was not at all of like I don't hear about that a lot anymore. People like, I like this kind of music. I like this kind of music too. Let's start a band. Like the whole media sphere is so varied and diverse now that I just hear less and less of that. So I think we all realized that we didn't really have a snowball's chance in hell, like kind of picking a direction from the get go. And I guess eclecticism has become part of our sound. We're starting to go through a process of narrowing it down and figuring some of that stuff out a little bit more in depth with each other and like it. But I think from the beginning it was like, do we enjoy playing this on stage with one another? Learn to surprise each other and grow that way together, as opposed to like following a protocol or a pre. It's because we really didn't know how to establish that at that point, so it was easier to do it more organically. Yeah.
I think Clay nailed it. Like in the beginning, our only criteria was like, do we have fun playing the song? Yes. All right, throw it on the set list.
And it's like our first EP was 4 very Casey songs, and then people talking to people as like a little curveball. Yeah.
And in terms of that sound, I like that we kind of gravitated towards the term like coherence. Like we want it to sound coherent, that we all kind of fit together and each song fits together. Um, and if anything, are trying to, I don't want to say like definitely not limit, but almost like establish some guidelines to encourage more innovation in the songwriting. So like sometimes having those guardrails, like, okay, you have to write a sonnet. Okay, great. I'm going to write a really cool sonnet now. Like, we're not going to be that strict, but like, let's define some ideas of what's in bounds and then we can play in that space and go bananas.
Yeah, well said, Claire. I want to give Claire a lot of credit too. Like she was a huge part of getting us to come together and talk to one another about this, and like we did it very officially. I mean, she's a consultant or has worked as a consultant, so she had like us fill out forms, all these forms, and like idea boards, and like enter in all this information, and then she created PowerPoints based on what we like. Yeah, so she's like incredible. We're saying we've been talking about it, but no, we've actually had a facilitated discussion about it, thanks to our wonderful bassist Claire Grossel.
Yes, I can take my services on the road for anyone interested.
Julia, we should hire Claire's services to figure out our band sound for the future.
I need Claire
Highly
to figure
recommend.
out my life. So
Anytime. Hi.
And I'll also credit Andrew with his guitar tone, like of that it's like you found a good way to bridge certain songs, I think, with that, and done that very intentionally as well. I think that as long as our songs are like breathing life into some kind of story, sometimes we're like rehashing like a story like George Bailey. A lot of people don't think It's a Wonderful Life. Oh yeah, that's my shit. That goes hard. But we wanted to make a song
I think that.
honoring
I think
that.
that.
Oh yeah, okay, awesome, my guy. That's probably why we're playing like shows together and hang out. But like that, it was like, no, there's themes there that are really hard hitting and universal, and that people are feeling right now very deeply. And I think that's more of our barometer. Are we hitting that, filling that need? Are we in service to our audience at that level of either challenging or bringing up something about the zeitgeist in the world that's going on around us? And it doesn't mean that we're a topical band or a protest band or something like that, but it's like, can it be universal, but also can it, hit people in the heart, or I guess in the mind sometimes, or just how, how are people connecting to the song? I think we concern ourselves more with that versus like a collective, coherent sound. And that's what been our approach from the beginning. It's starting to change. It's because you're right. I mean, it's helpful for a band to have a defined sound. Not, it may perhaps essential, but
Absolutely.
I think that that's part of our success too, has been driven out of that. Like, are we meeting the metric of that kind of storytelling, of how are we making people feel when they hear our stuff?
Absolutely. And I'll to throw my hat into this, my youthful hat into this as well. One of the things that I have greatly appreciated about this group is just the caliber of players that we have. And in songwriting so far, a lot of what we've done have highlighted different traits of the players to come through. So like Clay, thank you very much for the compliment for the guitar tones. I try to find tasteful licks that are genuinely my sound that best serve the song. Let's say Casey's excellent songwriting for a song, and then Ken throws in an epic drum fill, and Claire has that bass line and backup vocal, and Clay just soars on the top. It's an amalgamation of all five of us very talented players, and as well from the players of Grimm Winter's past, has brought everything together in that regard. So it's turned into an eclectic sound. We have players that do multiple things. Like a lot of us sing in the band. A lot of us play each other's instruments.
Yeah, I was gonna actually talk about that. You guys use backing vocals really, really well, and the way you're writing songs, like you mentioned before, Andrew, November Midnight, right, from Casey, and like the build up for that song, and the layers of vocals and the different vocal parts, like it's very well executed, but also like it helps feel a little bit like connective tissue across your your different songs. But I guess I'm curious, like, how do you guys approach when you're building out? Are you starting with like a main melody and then like you kind of just happen into the backing vocals? Are you thinking about like the build up? Like, what's the approach like?
I mean, we've made a lot of game time decisions in studio. I'll be honest about that. But like, I want to be like, oh no, like we planted every like meticulously thought this out before. Like sometimes we went into the studio, we're like, this isn't working. We gotta like we gotta come up with something on the fly. But you know, fortunately, as Andrew said, we're a bunch of nerds who love music and making vocal harmonies. That's one of my things that I really became obsessed with for a time. And specifically on the harmonies front, the buildup that you're talking about in November Midnight, that's all Casey with the layerings of like voices going on beside each other. And, you know, that was, I think, inspired by, you know, I don't know what it was inspired by, dude, but it's awesome.
It's very much an homage to Blink-182's Feeling This. Just straight up. Yeah. That was like 100% the intention when I wrote it. And I think even that one's like an homage to something the Beatles did, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not the first ones to do it, but they do it really well.
Exactly.
And particularly in that song, yeah.
I think,
But you guys do it really well too in that song in November Midnight.
as far as I think something you're talking about like voices being used as instruments or like as it was part of that is, you know, heavy choir background for me and classical background, but also like to try to think of certain parts as like little mini motets with a bunch of different, you know, florid lines going on at the same time. But I also was really inspired growing up by Bobby McFerrin and like, or really any voice actor. Like I love her, any actor that was good with voice. I was always obsessed with, and I was like, the voice is such this amazing instrument. And I feel like, you know, if I was making music and not using its potential as an expressive instrument, like sometimes when it's not, when if it's just an ooh or an ah, you can still say a lot with it when it still is like reduced to that. Or I guess if you put a restriction around it, it actually can be more expressive in a funny way. So that words, I don't know. That was something Claire said the other day in rehearsal. I completely ripped that off from her. Most good ideas are actually coming from Claire these days. I got to be honest.
I don't even remember saying that, but that's awesome.
I love that when you like you forget you said something like really really deep and great. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
it
that.
sounds like something brilliant I would have said. Exactly.
It's like finding a $20 bill in your pocket or your couch cushion. Be like, you know, you look back on it and be like, damn, I'm a genius. You know.
On the other hand, sometimes you'll be working on a song together and you'll be like, I hate this lyric. Who wrote this? And they're like, that was you.
I would like to ask you all, as somebody who has had a really terrible show for my first show, can you tell us about your worst or most embarrassing show?
I wanna say that I've never been embarrassed to be on stage with Grim Winter. I don't think like we've ever shown up given. I mean, sure, like our first shows were more scrappy or like rough around the edges, and like I was on bass for a lot of the first shows and trying to sing at the same time, which is really hard. And now I make Claire do that. So we played at this venue. I don't want to say the venues because I really like the people that run it. It was a Wednesday night, and we were out in Maryland, and it became clear at this venue that it was us and two other bands and the sound people, and there was no one else. So it was in essence, it was a musical scrimmage, but like with zero viewership. And you know what? I think we were obviously a little devastated to show up and be like, well, fudge. We're playing to literally no one right now, you know, and but that's it's kind of a badge of honor night at the same time. So I wouldn't say I was embarrassed by it. I've never been told. I've been told like you'll play to crowds of like 5 to 10 people. Like that's gonna. I never. No one's ever told me you're gonna play for no one, dude. Like, that's only happened once. So
Yeah. Thankfully, I mean, kudos to you guys for playing the show.
It felt
instead of just.
We felt so professional afterwards. It was great.
Yeah, I mean,
It was kind of liberating, you know.
yeah. Did you go like super experimental? You're like, all right, we're gonna do some like polka, you know?
We should have gone way weirder.
I think
This kind of leads me sort of into the segue for the next thing I'm wondering, because we've been talking about performances a little bit. So, do you guys view your role as musicians and songwriters as distinct at all from being a performer? What are your thoughts?
I say no. As a coming to someone as my thought of like the performer, the musician, the songwriter, the business person, the basically anything related to the band as an identity, from the sonic to the visual. If we're tasked with that, that's part of.
Sure.
I'm going to lump it under a business as a whole.
I think I hear what you're saying. Like, you want to put on a good show and you're there to entertain people, but I think that there's a three it goes 360 with us always of like how are we going to be in service to the audience and then go from there, as opposed to like this is really going to razzle dazzle them, or like we're going to be decked out in diamonds tonight, gang. It's really going to wow them, or like I'm going to crowd work for 20 minutes. I don't know, Casey, what do you think about that? Like, do you see the two inextricably linked, or like?
That's a great question. I've been honestly thinking about it the whole time. I think for me, there definitely is a difference between songwriting and performing. I mean, as someone who I wrote a bunch of songs and I before I met Clay and Andrew, and there was this whole process of like, oh, this is really fun, and like it's a great way to kind of express some of my feelings and channel this creative energy I have. And I think you think that translates one to one, and then you get on stage for the first time, and the lights are bright and hot, and it's scary, and your legs don't work and your voice doesn't work all of a sudden. And the song that you wrote is not the song that comes out, not even in a bad way necessarily, but
Yeah.
it's so transformative. I mean, it's you're really a live wire on that stage, and in a sense anything can come out. So that's pretty cool. And I really love it as much as I fear it.
Dude, I think we've all come a long way with that inner game piece, like since
Yeah.
starting out. I don't know. Sorry, Claire, were you going to say something?
Oh, very different, much more esoteric topic. There's like all this really interesting academic stuff of like that's the point of art, is it's like the difference between what's in your head and what the audience receives, and that gap is like where the magic happens. And I think that's really beautiful. So as someone who's not as involved in the writing of the songs, more about the arranging and performing, that's sort of where I'm thinking about the gap between like both my technical playing, what I'm trying to play, channeling what we were trying to do together, and then just like delivering that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, if you've ever listened to a song, and like one of our songs, like, oh, I like this song. Imagine how good it sounds in my head, because it's like 100 times better.
Oh, I see. The rest of the band's just bringing you down.
No, the opposite. The opposite.
Hey, you know what? We get paid for the attempt, okay, Casey?
Right.
And I never dreamt in colors till I saw the quilting stitched upon my sleeve, with my heart beat so frantically. And I'd never last a day as a ferryman. I'm much too content to let the currents pick the roads for me.
Tried to talk a little bit about how music can foster community, and clearly you guys have been involved with like Seven Drum City. That's like a super cool community. We've been really bad about attending their open mics, but like I'm so glad that like they exist. I'm just like curious to hear from you guys, what's your experience been with like independent music and fostering community through that?
You know what? I think like for us, it started out as very personal. I mean, it's hard to make an impact if you're not. I mean, our first show was a block party, and so I mean, there's different. When you talk about the Grimm Winter community or whatever, or the larger community in which we exist. I mean, it's. I think it's different for every member here in terms of what the shouts out to the Pocket and Seven Drum and Catgut and the like there's this whole undercurrent in the scene that not a lot of people know about in DC, and once you find that, the whole thing opens up for you. There's actually a lot of wonderful people who are connecting all the time over music, and not just for selfish purposes. I mean, it's really it's there's real, honest to goodness love and support between bands that we play with and fans and people that keep coming back to shows, and we keep going to other shows for other people just because I enjoy doing it. It's not just networking. It's like where I want to be on my Friday, Saturday. So
Yeah, I would say that like the Pockets open mic that like opened the door for us. Like, yeah, I remember like Josh and I were just kind of like, what the hell do we do? Like, what do we? How do we? What do we? What? And then we like went to the
Yeah.
Pocket open mic, and it was like, oh my god, you guys like actually like care and listen to each other, and like people were cool. And I think that yeah, it took us finding like that to like really be like, oh, like
Yeah.
this is it.
that was actually my most recent bomb was at the Pocket and on an open mic night. And I did not expect the audience to be vibing to this new song I'd written. I just performed it and I looked up and the audience was so engaged with me that it threw me off, and I started to get a little like choked up. And I don't know why. It was like a certain part of the song, and I was like, almost not. I kept going. I was able to get through it, but I wasn't expecting them to actually like it. Like, what is that kind of love and support? That really shook me to my core. Not used to that. Conservatory knocked that right out of me. No, but yeah, I think like it. There's definitely places, and I mean, where there's a group of like-minded people and artists, they're gonna want to get together and do their thing and support each other. That's just the name of the game.
Yeah. I definitely remember. So I joined a little bit later after Grimm Winter was up and running a little bit, and so my first show was at the Pocket, and I remember both before and after Casey played, everyone's just like chatting with the sound people, with the other bands, and I'm like, guys, I'm just like getting ready to play, or like, oh, I'm tired after playing, and I was like, oh wait, like we just chat, like this is so cool. Like, okay, what do you play? Or like, oh, what'd you think of this song? And like, it's such a welcoming and friendly place. And like, oh, okay, you're playing in 2 weeks. Okay, great. I'm putting my calendar right now. Like, just sort of that really genuine support is super welcoming.
Yeah, so I don't know if this has been brought up yet, but like this is the first band I've ever been in. You know, you heard my first story performing recently. You know, I'm well into my adulthood when I'm discovering this stuff, and the music scene, you know, at least in the area we live in the DC area, is super cool. It's super supportive. People are always willing to like hang out or come to each other's shows, and get to know each other, and that's really not like, you know, I'm kind of Josh, like I'm like you know, I have, you know, I know what chords are, but I learned from tabs and I play most things by ear, and so it's so scary to like meet other musicians. You know, I feel like I'm like a dog, like doing two dogs stare at each other from across the street, and you're like,
I echo what everyone said about the DC community. It's just super awesome to show up to a venue and I can recognize the sound guy, or even have the sound guy recognize us when we go to a show that we're not even playing. A friend of mine was playing at a show in Galactic Panther and played with the Orange Slices, and then I just mentioned that I play in Grimm Winter, and then she was like, I know you guys. Let's meet up and try to play a show, and then we're playing a show with them later this year. So it's like it's just the network spreads, but the genuine connection and just being awesome and just meeting really awesome people makes this a very fulfilling experience for me.
And I think the whole thing of also going like from the beginning when I really was newer and didn't know anyone else in the scene, and then fast forward to like at least a year or so later, I have friends visiting from out of town and coming to a gig, or maybe we're just seeing someone else's show and they're like, well, Claire, how do you like know all these people? This is so cool. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I like I'm part of it now. And so those are the contexts where you just realize you're really in it. It's cool.
I totally agree with a lot of what you've all said about kind of like that scene and the supportive nature of it. I guess like the flip side, because like a lot of what you spoke to is the connectivity between other musicians and kind of artists in the scene, right? I'm wondering a little bit about if you were put in a position to kind of be the pitch man for why someone who might be listening to this, who likes, alternative and indie rock, but maybe isn't so connected into the local music scene, right? Like they're a music lover, but they're not necessarily going to local shows. If you were put in a position to like pitch the idea of going to like local shows, Like what do you guys see as like the benefits that you would maybe highlight?
I would say like a lot of people. I'm always shocked when people are like, when I ask them like, do you do music or audio? And they're just like, oh no, I just listen. And usually those people, when I follow up with like, what are some people who inspire you? They have the most incredible answers. Their relationship with music couldn't be stronger, and yet they still don't see themselves as an essential part of the ecosystem. And I go, if it wasn't for you, I don't like. It's weird. Like it's almost like, you're so a part of this. How do you not see yourself as you're to me, you're as important as the artists that are on the stage, or the people actually digging their hands and partaking in the thing itself. It breathes life into what we do.
I would say even like sort of what Clay is saying, I really was looking for the underground music scene before I started playing in a band. And my pitch to a friend to come with me is, hey, there's a basement. I know at least one band might be good, and let's just go. And I personally love the grab bag experience of it. You really don't know what you're going to get. Like it could be screaming, it could be slam poetry, it could be hip hop, it could be jazz. You don't know. And so just go and see some music, see some people on the stage, bare their heart, connect with each other, connect with you, or try to, and maybe bring your earplugs, and just having a moment to sort of get out of your day to day, take a break, live in the moment, enjoy the music, take it in, maybe dance a little bit. It's just a needed respite and like rejuvenating. And even if it doesn't jive with you, it'll jive with someone. You'll see someone, learn something new. And that's just like the best experience to me.
Someone has a consulting background.
Very.
No, that was great.
Zing, Josh, zing.
It was great. I mean, it's not an offense. Like,
No, it's great.
It was. All right. To echo what Claire and Clay have been saying, the first pitch that I would bring to people is, hey, it's if you want to check out music live and want to meet people who also like live music, come on down. The first pitch for me is the community. It's a lot of like-minded people that just want to see some music in their in the neighborhood or in the city, and just see something new and exciting. And exciting because this band that you see one day could blow up into the next big band in a few years. I forget that person's name, but I recall someone at a Grimm Winter show I talked about said they saw Weezer before they blew up.
Andrew brings up a great point. Any of these bands could blow up, and then you'd get to say you came to their first show. And so, with that much at stake, can you really afford not to go?
Especially
The
Grim
real
Winter.
question.
Especially Grim Winter could blow up. So come to our show.
You know, it is super cool to just like meet and hang out with these people, you know, and then they're all real people, you know. I mean, we've had the opportunity to play with a ton of musicians, both local and like, you know, these people touring. I mean, you know, we're a little older now. I'm 30, which is 1,000 in musician years. We'll have these bands come down from, you know, the Midwest or something, and they're all these guys like right out of college, and they're living in a van, and they like, you know what I mean, they live in their hometown, and they do like waiter gigs to make enough money to get enough gas just to drive around. And I have so much admiration for them. And it's just such a cool experience. And so getting the opportunity to meet those people, it's really, really fun.
Yeah, I love playing with touring bands that are coming into town. I've learned a lot from them and from their music, and I love playing with local bands too. And it's great in the local scene. But like when you get the opportunity to look at people who are literally willing to put their life on hold for like, weeks at a time or months at a time in some case. And like, one band in particular we saw, they're like, yeah, right now our house has a tree going through like the living room or something, and we had a natural disaster, but we had to go out on tour anyway. And I'm like, you're playing the Pocket with us here, like, and it's like, that's a 75 seater venue. These are people who have, had 1 million followers on, Spotify, but they're still that hungry. This couple in their, I think 40s, like to still do that. And I was like, damn, give me some of that, like I want to be that hungry, and I don't know. I really respect the people who are sacrificing a lot to do their art, uh, and a lot of them seem to do it in a good way. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do think sometimes about like the unique benefits you get from having these like close intimate shows. We have been talking a little about the Pocket and Seven Drum City and kind of about how both of our bands really kind of had really early roots in that space. And I think Clay, you spoke to this before about like the importance of those people who do go to those places to view those shows, even if they're not picking up an instrument. I mean, like, it is such an important part of this ecosystem.
It's not enough value placed on that anymore, and I think that's why people
No,
aren't listening to music as intently as they used to, or as ravenously as they used to. But
yeah, and also just the fact that I mean, there's so much now, right? Like the
Right.
market is so saturated. You can listen to like I could literally like open up any song that's in recorded history right now and listen
Totally.
to that. So it's like you're competing with the entirety of like human civilization. Like, from Bach to,
damn
like,
it,
yeah,
I never
it's just
thought of it
like,
that way. That's terrifying, Josh. That's a new
No,
reality
a
I have
lot
to
of
live
it.
with now.
Yeah. To add on to what Josh was saying in the discussion board, there is this idea of you think about, like, this is gonna be weird, but bear with me. You think about like Grubhub, right? You think about like food delivery apps, and there's this sort of like tyranny of convenience when it comes to like eating, right? Like, why, it's probably better for you to get out and like meet a friend for a lunch or something, but why do that when you could pay twice as much to have it just arrive at your doorstep, and Spotify and Apple Music, as much as bands like us rely on them, they have taken a lot of the idea of like, oh, come down to the local your bar every Friday. They have new bands featured. Like, why take a chance on that when you could just have an algorithm show you 200 songs? I mean, here's a scary statistic that I'm going to butcher, but there were like more songs released every single day in 2024. Like every single day, more songs came out than like the entire catalog of songs released in 1980 or something like that. Yeah.
I think I saw that and I was just like, yeah, it is a double-edged sword though, right?
Sure.
Because there's a lot more things that are accessible now that probably weren't back then. When I was in high school, I had like a 4-track recorder, and that was kind of like a big deal for like, our high school band to have that,
Yeah.
right? But like, but I don't think we would necessarily be where we're at now if like we were still using a 4-track recorder, right? So like it is a double-edged sword. Like the technology, it means that the competition is so stiff and like the market is so saturated, but it also means that it gives so much opportunity for bands like us to probably go further and do
Absolutely.
more. Yeah.
No, 100%.
I think the importance of the musical community, just to, I guess, put a cap on it, was like, there's this article I read recently about three circles. Like everyone has three circles: their inner family, their inner unit, and then there's like this village thing, and then there's their outer circle of like friends, and like, that people that you want to see, or your chosen people that are a little bit outside your inner family unit. But the village, the middle circle, has really dissipated. Like people don't really talk to their mailmen anymore, and there's like, how many parents don't really know the teachers that are spending all their time with their children, or like, how, and it's that middle thing of like losing the village that for me, I get a huge sense of communion, and see a rebirth of that through the music scene as well. I mean, it's incredibly, I think, important to all of us just to have to. It's church. It's not that people need religion, but like they do need that communion. They do need that togetherness, that shared experience that goes beyond a transaction. And we're not doing that as well as a society as we used to. Yeah.
I think that's definitely true. I may have seen the same thing you're talking about. Like the circles sounds very familiar. I'm gonna ask, I think, one last question. So anything on the band's bucket list? Like anything you guys envision for the future you'd like to accomplish, haven't yet accomplished?
Play 9:30. I mean, isn't that what we're all trying to?
Yeah, I'm full of bucket lists. My bucket is full. No, I think it would be super. I think we talked about this as a band randomly in our group chat the other day. Um, um, about just like having people. I mean, a big part of songwriting and the way I listen to music is I really really love lyrics, right? The poetry of lyrics, the meaning behind lyrics, especially when they're like, I don't know, weird and very subjective, I guess. I don't know, non-literal. But I think I'm always, I don't know. I think we've had a few instances of this already, but like where I can look down the audience and like people know the words, right? That always, I don't know. That's such a pure connection to me. So I don't know. I guess it's not really a bucket list item, but like I don't know if we could do that thing, where bands are like singing, they like point the mic to the audience,
Yeah.
and the audience like they know the words and they do the chorus or something. That would be so cool. That would be my favorite thing.
I'm definitely with you, Casey. Like, yeah, I feel like that would be a dream come true type thing.
If you can lead the crowd in a sing along with an original song, that's yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you guys very much for taking the time to talk with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super
Thank you both.
looking forward to playing with you guys
thank you.
again. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Same. Hey, Julia, we just finished talking to Grim Winter. What did you think?
It was a very cool conversation. I really loved hearing about like how their whole band like works together and just like the way that they plan things out and the way that they think strategically. And I love like how everyone is like so involved and like thinks about all the things. And it was very cool to hear. It was also really cool to, talk about the pocket because we've had some experience with that. But yeah, it was a really great conversation. Maybe kind of mad that our band isn't as cool as them. Come on, you fool, get your act together. But yeah, it was great.
Hey, our band is cool. No, but yeah, I'm not gonna say I'm surprised, but one thing that I think about a lot with Grim Winter is just how fun they are as people and how fun it is to talk to them before and after shows, and we've always had a tremendous amount of fun with them, and also really like their music, of course. Like they're a fantastic band, but yeah, I think because we have such a like fluid dynamic and such like fun conversations. Um, Again, I wasn't surprised, but it was just, really cool to be able to, like, dig a little bit deeper in our conversation this time around. Like, for instance, I was not expecting at all, like, the breaking out, like, the forms and spreadsheets and stuff with, like, their band approach, like, that was just so cool.
Yeah.
And, like, bringing to mind that kind of, like, sophistication, you know? And, like, I knew, for instance, that Clay had a background, with more kind of classical music training, but hearing a little bit more about that side of him was really cool. I definitely feel a kinship with Casey in terms of like the way we kind of both came about with music. Hearing about the experiences from Andrew and Ken and Claire, like in terms of how they kind of got into music and what their approach is with the band, it's really it was really interesting to kind of hear those different dynamics, and I really appreciated the space to explore that a little bit more deeply than we have been able to after a show. So,
Yeah.
so
100%.
yeah, it was tremendously fun.
Yeah.
So hope you all enjoyed the conversation. Please remember to like and subscribe. It helps us a lot if you're able to do that. We're trying to release these episodes on a bi-weekly schedule, kind of every other Wednesday. So we hope to have another one for you soon. But in the meantime, if you missed any of the previous episodes, please, go back and watch them. And again, like and subscribe because it really does help. So thank you very much for listening and watching, and hope to see you next time. Thanks.